Hey everyone, welcome to this week's AMS Live. It is December 19th, and we're going to start out with the issue paid annuity and IUL numbers. So for IULs week 50, we have Jeffrey E. 197, Charles F. 312, Doris W. 780, Daryl N. 1083, Robert I. 1117, Marcus R. 1404, Charles H. 1511, Omar F. 1558, Matthew W. 2008, John A. 2022, Todd S. 2087, Christopher F. 2100, Peter O. 2117, Philip R. 2634, Corey H. 2959, Ellis S. 3027, Dean P. 3056, John G. 3703, Paul M. 3960, Danielle B. 6477, Timothy J. 7200, Selim M. 11108, and David E. 16906, with a weekly total of 79,326. Then for December 5th through December 11th, issue paid annuities, we have Sydney H. 18,000, Todd H. 25,443, John M. 30,000, Danielle B. 34,319, Denisio O. 48,640, Bradley A. 50,000, Danielle B. 54,851, Tyler S. 72,296, Matthew M. 73,793, Raymond D. 80,266, Lisa H. 90,174, Edward P. 100,000, John B. 108,661, Allison P. 113,462, Brian L. and David P. 114,385, Shelley M. 131,219, and Jonathan W. 251,893, with a weekly total of 1,397,409. And that is our weekly numbers for the IULs and annuities. And then we are going to move into...
Good job. It's a long list.
Yeah, that's a great numbers for everyone.
Yeah, it is. Well, we see a lot of people who, the number of submitted apps, both on the IUL and the annuity side, have grown.
Yeah.
And we're seeing some people who attended the Athene, Iowa trip. So that's always exciting, too.
Yeah. We're going strong for the end of the year. And then we are going to follow up that with the Q&A section. And our first question is from Helena V, and she wants to know what annuitization is.
Annuitization. So annuitization, if you look it up in a dictionary, it doesn't exist. At least I don't think it exists. So I hope I'm right. But you type in annuitization into Word, it says it's not a word. But it is a word in the industry, and we're talking about accumulation and decumulation. We talk about the life cycle of retirement, of financial earnings and spending. Annuitization is simply lifetime income. So it's when the contract enters into an agreement that, okay, Lauren, you and Isaac work for X amount of years, you're going to retire at 60, 65, whatever it is, and you decide to annuitize a lump sum of money. Now, annuitization is always a lump sum, and you give that lump sum away, so you'll never see it again, Lauren, and it pays you all for the rest of your lives, okay? The older you are, the higher it pays you out. So if you're around 65, it's probably going to be about 4.5%, maybe 5%. If you're at 75, it's going to be closer to 6%, right? Okay. Because you're closer to death, so
you have
it'll pay you more. Less time on Earth,
pay you out.
based on the statistics, right? Yeah, so it's based on the averages. So if I say the average age of death is 84 for a male, that means that 50% of males live longer and 50% of males live shorter. So there is a big range there, but averages are averages, and that's what they use. So annuitization is key. I'm going to bring this back to, this is a little bit detailed, but bear with me. This is important stuff to know. It's all about growing your knowledge. So when we write an annuity with a lifetime income rider, that's not annuitization.
Yep.
That's a guarantee that if you withdraw a certain amount and the account goes to zero, that they will guarantee you those payments until you die. So it's very similar, but it's not annuitization.
They retain their liquidity.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. So they get to keep access to the principal. And that means it's a guaranteed rider of drawdown, a guarantee of withdrawal. It's not annuitization. Annuitization, you give them a lump sum. You'll never see it again. You can't have that liquidity. You can't access again. And they give you that stream of payments. So what's the difference? Well, it's a slight trade-off. With the annuitization, you'll have the highest payout. So if I say you have X amount of money And you have two choices. You have a guaranteed withdrawal amount or you have an annuitization amount. The annuitization amount will always be higher.
Okay.
Maybe not a lot, but over the course of time. So if I say, do you want $950 a month or $900? You say, well, I want $950, but you'll never be able to access again an emergency or change the withdrawals. And you say, well, now, when you say that, I want the $900. But if we take $50 times 12 months, which is $600 a year, times 30 years, right? And that's just an example.
Yeah.
It is a difference there. Now, the other difference, which it just doesn't come into play with our average client, is annuitization has the most optimized tax footprint. So what it does is it gives you back some of your principal, some of your interest, and then some that's called an exclusion ratio, which isn't taxed at all. So if we annuitize something, we have the lowest tax footprint. But the reality is when you start doing the calculations of the advantages, it's like once you get into the couple $1 million range that it really makes a difference, maybe even higher than that. So we really don't train on that too much because if we say, hey, I recommend a SPIA, which is annuitization, versus a lifetime income rider because it has such favorable tax advantages. Well, here you are, looking at $180,000. The tax advantage is probably like $18 a year. Yeah. So we're not too worried about it. One other thing, because this I think is the good question. That's Helena, good question. Any annuity can be annuitized. So one of the reasons I don't write a lot of income annuities is because you get more gross value. You accumulate more in an income annuity, in an accumulation annuity, eliminate fees, eliminate risk, and grow it as much as you can using index options. But let's say I grew an index annuity. So I recently bought a Performance Elite 15. Okay. And that Performance Elite 15, let's say I grow to age 70 and it's worth $750,000. I can just turn it into lifetime income for my younger spouse who, is probably going to outlive me by 2 decades, right? So I always have that option. So keep that in mind. You can still annuitize something that doesn't have an income rider on it. So I know that was a lot, but great question.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I think that's a good explanation. If you guys need any more, just email us. And then the next question is from Janine A. And she is asking, are non-qualified funds taxed when they are moved to an annuity? And so I think what she's talking about is if they're already invested into mutual funds or something like that.
And I agree, that's probably the most common application of that question. I'll answer it in 2 ways though. If it is coming from an annuity, you can do a 1035 exchange, and non-qualified funds that grow tax deferred inside annuity, that's one of the advantages of annuity, will move to another annuity, just like doing a property exchange on a 1031, and they will grow tax deferred in that annuity. There is no tax consequence. Yeah. But what she's probably talking about is the funds are not in an annuity. They're in a brokerage account, and let's say there's some stocks and bonds and things of that nature. Well, stocks have risk. Anything that has risk, that's the way to remember. Anything that has risk, like real estate or stocks, doesn't get taxed as ordinary income. It gets taxed at capital gains. Okay. So let's say, Lauren, you invested $50,000 10 years ago. Let's say it's grown to $75,000, okay? And it's all in stocks. You have made, your cost basis is 50, you've made $25,000. When you take that money out, and you're gonna put it into an annuity now, because now you're done growing it, you wanna move it over.
Yeah.
That $25,000 will be taxed. So whoever asked that question, that will be taxed, but it's taxed at capital gains. Once it goes in an annuity, so let's say it's 15%. So whatever 15% of the $25,000 is, they would have to hold that out to make sure they cover the taxes. Yep. When it's in the annuity, it's going to grow tax deferred, and when you take it out, anything that you gain is taxed as income. But my point is this. It's going to be taxed sometime eventually. Here's the only exception. It's only time that the IRS actually does something that I think is fairly favorable. If I have a stock, so I own quite a bit of Amazon stock, and I'm not bragging. I'm just saying it's something I bought, got lucky on because I've made a lot of bad choices, and it has some sentimental value, right? And that stock was here, now it's here. Let's say, and this is actually a plan of mine, I reserve 10 shares of Amazon for each of my kids, so it's 40 shares. This is the only time that you have a tax advantage. It's called a step up in basis. So when that stock, when I die, if I gift it to them, I have to pay the capital gains tax. If I die and pass it to them, let's say Amazon's at $5,000 a share, their new basis is $5,000 and I don't have to pay the difference. That's the only exception. So unless you have a rare instance where one stock is something they want to give and bequeath to their kids, well, they can hold on to that stock and use it for when they die and transfer over. But other than that, the vast majority of stocks that we accumulate, we're accumulating so we can spend them. So at some point you have to pay that tax, that capital gains tax. So yes, you'll pay capital gains tax, which is usually more favorable than income tax. And when you pay that capital gains tax, you can move it over to the annuity, which again, I know that's a long answer. I'm trying to give you some education around the whole scenario. But yes, when you move non-qualified funds into annuity, if they're in stocks, you're going to have to pay the capital gains first. Or losses. Those they can have losses in the portfolio.
Okay.
They get to write those against capital gains, and then they're done paying their taxes. And my point is this: you got to pay the taxes at some point. It'd be like sitting at a poker table or a blackjack table, and you got your winnings. And if you want to cash out, you have to pay a cash out fee. Well, you could never cash out.
But you're never
going to access the money, right? So, it's
Yeah.
just part of life. Yes, you have to pay taxes on non-qualified money when you transfer it from, mutual funds, stocks, over to an annuity.
Yeah, and just make sure you guys are letting your clients know that if that's something that you are doing. And that wraps up our Q&A portion. If you guys have any more questions you want to see answered, just email info@fflams.com and we'll get them on the next call.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks.
Hey everyone, Sean Ruggiero. This is the classroom session of the FFL Advanced Market Sales AMS Live. Broadcasting on Facebook. We also have it on the YouTube channel and on the FFL AMS website. I'm going to talk to you about a very common scenario. I mean, literally, we're talking about essentially if you're a married couple in retirement, 100% of the clients that we work with are going to have to deal with this at some point. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the challenge of income replacement. So we have two spouses, one dies. How do we replace that income? And fighting inflation. And we're going to use something that won an award here nationally in the U.S. as the #1 fixed index annuity product, the Athene Agility. All right, so I'm going to show you how that works. We've got this is the story of Joe and Susan Smith. So just to try to bring it into reality a little bit, let's apply this to a scenario that we see a lot. And when I say we see a lot, if we want to get really good, we want to start producing $10 million a year in annuities per person. I mean that. We have some people who are high-powered agents. We have people that are starting to hit close to $5 million a year in annuity volume. We want to keep growing that. So think about not just the leads that you run, the final expense and the mortgage protection leads, but also think about the people you know, right? You're an expert in protecting financial capital as well as human capital. So work with people on that and explain what you do and say, hey, have you done anything to solve the income gap or fight inflation for your retirement? And these people here are 55 and 52 years old respectively. That's who Joe and Susan Smith are. So how many people do you know that are in that scenario? Husband might be a little older than the wife or vice versa, and they're in their late 40s or in their 50s. They're going to start thinking about retirement. This is that scenario. So first, the battle against inflation, okay? Income gap is obvious. You're going to lose money. When you do lose that money, how are you going to replace it? But inflation sometimes isn't taken as seriously as it should. A couple of statistics here. A $20 purchase in 1982 now costs $49. That's 146% increase. Okay, another little trivia question you can ask people. We used to do this when we would do the presentations, the workshops. We would ask, all right, does anyone here want to venture a guess? And I'll hide it here. But how much, if you had $1 in 1900, so Teddy Roosevelt is president and he gives you $1, how much would that dollar be worth today? Right? The answer is 5 cents. 5 cents. It's lost 95% of its value. Why is that? It's because about every 28 years, your purchasing power gets cut in half, or the cost of goods doubles. That's significant. That's like saying, hey, we're going to cut your income in half every 28 years, right? We're going to gradually cut it down, so every 28 years you have half the money. So you have to focus on things that can provide a hedge against inflation. What is one of those things that virtually every retiree will have access to? Social Security. Social Security adjusts upwards every year based on the CPIW, the workers' index. Okay, that inflation's been relatively low recently, and it'll probably continue to be low. Somewhere around 1.9% was what it was last year, and it was, I think, 1.6% the year before. And it's going to stay around that, but it's going up with inflation. We're not seeing a lot of inflation right now. We might even see some deflation, which is very bad for the economy. But my point being that if it goes up, Social Security goes up. But what else goes up? Okay, let's look at this here. Let's just dissect their household income. So right here we have Joe Smith. Okay, that's the gentleman who is 55. Joe has set aside for retirement that he'll make $2,000 a month in Social Security, $1,000 in his month drawing down 4% from his IRA. That's a calculation that target could move, and $500 a month in a pension. So he has a total of $3,500 a month. Now, what does Susan have? Susan has $1,000 a month of Social Security, so she did work. She has some workers' earnings. She has $1,000 a month from her IRA based on 4% drawdown. So she has a total of $2,000 a month. So their total household income, when you add these all together, the Social Security, the IRAs, and the pension, is $5,500 a month. But what happens when the older, less healthy gender that doesn't live as long, male, Joe, what happens when he dies? Well, you can see right here, Susan gets to keep the higher of the two Social Securities, but not both. All right? She loses $1,500 a month. She's now only making $4,000 every month. So if we take that $1,500, that's about $18,000 a year that she's lost. Now, this is a time, Joe's hopefully not going to die the first day of retirement, first year of retirement. He's hopefully going to live a long time. Maybe he lives 28 years. Well, guess what? Their purchasing power has been cut in half. Now, Social Security will go up with inflation, but we're talking about redirecting some of these IRA funds in anticipation of this and coming up with a plan, with a product that is an award-winning product that really is an unbeatable plan. I can't think of a better way to solve this dilemma. Let me show you. We're going to use the Athene Agility 10, and here's what it looks like. Hopefully you can see this all right, but the first thing we have to do is we always have to talk about the 0%. Don't ever skip past this in the disclosure packet when you present an annuity. Hit this head on because this is a valuable thing, okay? I'm going to show you how we do this. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I'm going to illustrate for you a 0% illustration. Why am I doing that? Well, as I mentioned, this product has no fees and no losses. It will not go down if the market goes down. Now, I'm going to give you a hypothetical situation that is ridiculous. It's not going to happen. But by law, and because I want to emphasize the power of this product, I want to show you. If you got 0%, that means that using this index, that means that the market, because the market is tied to the index, so you are indirectly invested in the market, right, through this index. If the market goes down every month, for every year, for the rest of your life, this is what it would look like. Now, you and I both know that's not going to happen. But just for perspective, here's what it would look like. You would take out, when you retired, assuming that the declining market for every month and every year up to that point didn't derail it. My point being that you wouldn't have it derailed if it wasn't here. You would take out $7,700 every year, and by the time, let's say, Susan died, because this is based on both your lives. Let's say Susan lives to 91, and let's say that Joe is long gone. You would have taken out $216,000 off of the original $150,000 in an environment when the market went down every month for every year for the rest of your life. So let's draw some contrast. Your current plan is to do some 4% drawdowns from your IRA. Well, if you did that and left it in traditional stocks and bonds, the declining market would have created an inability to draw down any money really past age 72. You would have spent all your money because your money would be gone with the declining market, the drop in appreciation in stocks, and with you taking money out. So do you see how in a hypothetical situation, an impossible situation, that if the market went down for 30 or 40 years, you would still make money? And notice this. See how your account is at zero? You had run out of money, but they keep paying you? That's because this is a contract. This is not aggregation of averages. This is not percentages. This is not a guess. Now, I'm a believer in the market. You always hear me say that. I'm a patriot. I'm a capitalist. I'm a believer in the market. And I think it's a great place to accumulate. And I also know that this 0% scenario where the market never returns anything any month for any year for the rest of your life is impossible. But if it was, this is what you'd have. And that's a pretty powerful perspective. So as agents, you see how I can use the 0% illustration to point out some fantastic benefits of this product. So now let's get to reality. The reality is if we look at the averages, and you notice I don't have this pumped up to all 2-year point to point to make the illustration look better. I actually have this split 50% in 1-year options, 50% in 2-year options. It's returning 5.7%. So here we have a product that has no fees whatsoever. It doesn't have that insidious erosion of money in your account that you sometimes never see, which is called fees. It will never go down if the market goes down. And it's averaged 5.7% over the last 10 years if you backcast it, okay? So if we look at that, what's going to happen is that when you turn 67 and Joe turns 67, Susan turns 64, there's going to be $18,000 there available. Now, hopefully Joe's not dead by 67, but that $18,000 solves that dilemma right there. Now let's go forward. Let's say Joe lives to 83. Susan is still 80. You know how much money they take out that year? They take out $45,000. $45,000. How can that be? Remember I said that your purchasing price gets cut, purchasing power gets cut in half every 28 years? How inflation doubles the cost of goods every 28 years? This is going up because the index is going up. And see, if the index goes up, inflation goes up. So this is an inflation hedge. It's the best annuity out there because it offers not only the ability for a $150,000 investment to redirect some of those IRAs into this at an early age, relatively early age, 55 years old for Joe, okay, 52 years old for Susan. It allows you to put that in there, grow it organically, eliminate fees, eliminate downside risk. Heck, they could still take the cash out if they wanted. They might decide that they don't want to do this later on. They might win the lottery or sell a huge piece of real estate or get a big inheritance, and it changes everything. So be it. But worst case, they have now done 2 things with one product and had no risk. The first thing they did was they solved the income gap. The second thing they did was they solved the inflation deficit. So here we are. Let's come back to this. Here we are. Let's say Susan is still alive at 90 years old. It's extremely likely for a healthy female that is growing up in today's society with what they have access to as far as nutrition, health, exercise, diet, you name it, right? And so now that year she takes out $79,000. Do you think she's outpacing inflation? And are we using some huge number? No, we're illustrating at 5.5%. And she now gets to take out $79,000 that year out of the original $150,000. And keep in mind, we started taking money out way earlier in retirement, even when Joe was still alive. She takes out $1.18 million. And oh, by the way, if this was a traditional IRA, getting 5.7%, getting kind of conservative, but having a few fees, having some risk to the market, if it was a traditional IRA and you were taking out a fixed percentage, your money would have been gone then. Their money was gone back when Susan was still 78 years old. But because it's a guaranteed contract, none of this matters. They will keep paying her, and they will keep adjusting it upwards for inflation when the index goes up, even though you have no money in your account. That's an amazing product, okay? That's the Athene agility. And oh, by the way, if they both died tragically early, a car wreck or whatever it might happen, it gets paid out, the full benefit base gets paid out to their beneficiaries over a 5-year period. And that's powerful. Why? Because we don't want to have that inheritance that inheritance rich feeling where these kids, now these kids might be 50 years old at the time, they might be 30 years old at the time, they go out and spend it all because they get it as one lump sum. It spreads it out, minimizes the tax footprint, and gives them to them over a 5-year period, which is great because you're giving them these gifts after something that would be, I think, relatively tragic if they died that young. But you're giving them these gifts from the grave, so to speak. So, and that's just a footnote on the plan here. So no matter what happens, we're looking at the statistics, the probability, right? You see in baseball, they have these spray charts. They do all these shifts because the player that's up to bat tends to pull the ball to left field 92% of the time. Well, they shift it over there. But just in case, they still have the first baseman over here on the second baseline, just in case he defies it. Well, agility's got you covered. Eliminate fees, eliminate risk, okay? Eliminate the income gap, eliminate the inflation fear, and oh, by the way, if you die, it's going to pay out the full benefit base in a very well-structured way to your beneficiaries. So that's all we have. I hope it helps. If you have any questions, please email info@fflams.com. Thanks, everyone. Hey everyone, Sean Ruggiero. I'm here with Chris Cazares. He's joined us for Agent Profiles. We're actually here in Des Moines, Iowa, meeting with Athene. Great day of training today and an even better day coming up tomorrow. So, Agent Profiles, we're getting to know in a quick few minutes agents that have been with Family First Life, some of them a long time, some not so long. Find out how they how they got to be here and how they got to be writing annuities. So, Chris, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Bridget keeps me on task, as I've expressed before. So I've got my 4 questions. I'm going to fire them off. Okay. First thing, Chris, where are you from? How long have you been with Family First Life? And what did you do before this?
I am from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Been with Family First Life. I got introduced to it in March. Loved it immediately. 2019. 2019.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So loved it immediately. Got through it and took the test and passed by day 5.
Yeah.
It took about 2.5 months to get it all in place.
So
I didn't really start running until about April-ish.
Yeah. Not to distract from the rest of the questions here, but what was the delay? Were you still working another job? Were you not buying leads yet?
No, a little hold up with the state and a couple of other things.
Gotcha, get the licensing going. Yeah, perfect. Now you got it, now you're going. That's good. That's what we do. Question number 2. Did you close your first annuity appointment, or I'm sorry, when did you close your first annuity appointment, and how many annuities have you closed since then?
Gotcha. I closed the first one probably about 2 months in.
Okay.
Closed it, but didn't finalize.
Yeah. Oh, it happens.
Liquidating her funds in the midst of us trying to move them over.
Yeah.
Funny enough. But nonetheless, I've done 8.5, counting the one I helped one of my new agents completely walk through.
Yeah.
In her first month in the field, actually.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's great work. Yeah, we see your name coming in. Who is Chris Cazares, right? You know, it's coming out of nowhere, but that's that means that you're doing it right from the get-go. And chances are you're using a financial inventory and asking everybody the question every time.
Every question I can.
Yeah. And that's the important thing is just be consistent.
Very deep, detailed financial questions, yeah.
Good. Question 3, what is the most important challenge that you had to overcome when you sold, let's say, your first annuity, or then one that's memorable to you, one where you know, okay, this is something I got to overcome, this is a challenge, here's how I overcame it?
So as long as you're studying what products that we have to offer, the selling of it essentially shouldn't be hard. It's the backside and getting the funds moved and all that. Right. So that was the part that I had to, and I'm still learning, but that was the tough part. That process, what's proper, what they do or don't accept electronic signatures, those kind of things. So actually getting the funds moved to Athene or whoever the carrier may be, and finalizing everything for the client, not leaving too much, just dead airspace in that funding time for other things to happen. Where the broker can come back in and take the client back, those kind of things.
Yeah.
So
And two parts to that, really. One, no communication is bad communication, so you got to keep in touch with them. Hey, they're still working on it. And here's the analogy I give if it's taking a long time. You ever been to Costco, especially when there's a hot deal going on or when people are gearing up for Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
The lines are long, right?
Absolutely.
Well, it tells you you're shopping at the right place at Athene or whoever we assigned the annuity to because the lines are long.
Yeah.
But that's a good sign, right? If they did it one day, they're too hungry for your business, right? And then the other thing is preparing them for what's going to happen. And we just released a new video talking about we have now it accompanies the financial inventory. It's just new, so you probably haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
And it's what to prepare them for. And it's a little checklist where the client initials 4 things. And in that we talk about, hey, your current financial advisor will probably say X, Y, Z. And we do it in a very tasteful, tactful, proper way, but just that preparation, so communicate and prepare. Great answer though, by the way. Last question, what would your primary piece of advice be for a brand new agent out there?
Study the products that we have to offer.
Yeah, okay.
That way, when the situation arises, if you're asking the golden question or the right questions, that you know what product fits that client's situation the best. Whether it be an income or whether it be accumulation, so know your product. That's the biggest thing. And I'm sorry, the illustration tool playing in there was key.
Yeah. Well, and you know what those things do? They give you confidence.
Absolutely.
Because knowledge is confidence, right? And that's I've always said the only reason I ever go out and got educated was because it made me confident, and I didn't like the opposite of that, right?
Absolutely.
So, all right, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming by. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
All right, hello everyone. Sean Ruggiero, Family First Live Advanced Market Sales. I'm here with a celebrity in our midst, Mr. Tom Hegna. Tom, how are you doing today?
Hey, Sean, doing great. I'm down here in Arizona. Weather's nice. Looking forward to our event in Vegas.
Yeah, well, I'd be looking forward. I'm looking at snow right now here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. So everybody says they love the 4 seasons. I like 3 of the 4 seasons. So I'm a little jealous of you down there. But So, Tom, I wanted to first share some appreciation, some acknowledgement. I appreciate you doing this interview. When we signed you up for a speaking event, you've made yourself available for multiple calls, shot some videos for the agents, give them an idea of what's coming on. So, I really do appreciate that and thank you. And I want to make valuable use of this time. So I have a few questions for you. And the first question is this. You came last year, and this is the first time you had worked with us. So, we're kind of, wondering what to anticipate. We're telling you there's going to be quite a few agents there. Well, it turns out there was more than 2,000 agents at our last Vegas event. We're anticipating more than 3,000 agents for this event. Yeah, it's exciting. So could you tell us a little bit about, what that means to you? It's got to be pretty exciting. And also what these agents can expect to learn from Tom Hegna up on stage, because you're speaking twice.
Yeah. So look, first of all, it was an incredible event. You got the Sean and Sean show. You got Sean Ruggiero and Sean Mike up there. And then what I really liked was that you had so many top producers sharing best practices. So this isn't going to be just some home office meeting where people come and it's boring. They're going to hear from real producers who are actually getting the job done. And then they're going to hear from some experts in certain areas. Mine is going to be all about, retirement income, the importance of life insurance, the importance of protecting against long-term care, and then the right words and language to use. Because I always say, Sean, this is not a knowledge business anymore. You give me an iPad, the internet, 15 minutes, I can figure out anything I need to figure out. You need to have the right words, the language, the questions, the stories. And then I'm going to do a whole section on handling objections that I think is going to be very powerful. Because as you know, when you first come in the business, one of the toughest things is when they say, well, Ken Fisher says this, or what about this? And well, my brother-in-law doesn't like that. And you got to know how to handle those objections. And I'm going to share the most common life and annuity objections and how to handle them and just knock them out of the ballpark.
Yeah, Tom, I used to think I did a pretty good job speaking and teaching, and then I saw you teach. And I remember one comment you had, because I get feedback from the agents talking about, oh, you don't like an annuity? Well, then why don't you take your Social Security check and tear it up, right? And you got like a standing applause for that one. And that's just a snippet of what agents can expect is just like you said, the answers to the objections, the answers to the questions, because anyone can sit there and spit out technical information. Here's your interest rate, here's your yield to maturity, and all these different things. It's that ability to address the client that we sit down with. And for Family First Life, Tom, that is, that's someone probably with maybe $200,000-$300,000 of investable assets. So they really need to make sure that money last them and their spouse's lifetime. The second question, fixed index annuities, they have passed or are passing the variable annuity, the stalwart that had been around since the 50s. They represent 90% of our business. So, can you tell us a little bit about what you've learned about FIAs, because they're relatively new to the industry, and what aspects you like about those?
Well, what I really like about the fixed index annuities is the income guarantees, because as you know, I talk about retirement all the time, and retirement is all about income. It's not about assets, it's about income. And if you have enough guaranteed lifetime income, you can have fun, you can enjoy yourself, and it comes down to, my first book was Paychecks and Playchecks. You want to have a paycheck to cover basic living expenses, but then you want to have a playcheck so you can actually go out and do something. And if you think about it, Sean, people have been, in their minds, they've been trained not to touch their assets. Oh, we can't touch our 401k. We got to let it grow. We got to save it. We got to protect it. Well, then they get to retirement and they don't have the paycheck anymore. Now they got these assets that they've been psychonomically programmed not to touch. And so what all the research shows is you should take a portion of your assets and turn that into guaranteed lifetime income. And a perfect place to do that is a fixed indexed annuity. In fact, Roger Ibbotson, who's a professor emeritus at Yale, did a whole study and showed that fixed indexed annuities have outperformed bonds for the last 30 or 40 years, and he projects that into the future as well. And so what the PhDs and the economists who've studied retirement say is you should at least move your bond portfolio into an annuity. So even if you have an annuity hater that believes in stocks, I'm not saying that a fixed index annuity is going to replace a stock portfolio, but it certainly can replace a bond portfolio. And if you've got an average person that's 60% stock and 40% bonds, if you got just the 40%, you'd be really happy out of all the trillions of dollars that are out there.
Right.
And math and science will show if you do that, your returns are going to go up and your risk is going to go down in the portfolio. So nobody can even argue that point, Sean. We could argue should you have 50, 60, 70%, but nobody can argue that the average person should have somewhere between 20 and 40% of their portfolio into annuities, because the research shows it will increase returns, lower risk of the whole portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some excellent points. You mentioned the article by Mr. Ibbotson, and we actually have that. I'm saying this to the agents watching on your FFLAMS.com website. It's under the resources tab. It's an excellent article because we just closed one for an agent in, I think it was Texas last week, talking about the 100 minus your age rule, right? So this client was 70 years old and said, okay, so your portfolio, I assume, has 70% bonds, 30% equities, which can help fight inflation and give you a little extra long-term gain potentially. And they said, yeah, something like that, right? And then I'm looking at their statement. I said, well, we seldom get and this is to your point, the economists, the PhDs, we seldom get to hear the input from someone who is neutral, agnostic, right? They don't make a commission. So they can sit back there and say, well, I've done the numbers. And what do you always say? It's math and science. You can't defy math and science. It's like saying, hey, I want at 240 pounds, go jump from the 3-point line. And that defies physics. It's not going to happen, right? So why listen to the people? And trust me, the broker dealers, I'm an RIA myself. We have value. A lot of that is just the guidance is what we go. But when it comes to picking a product, the math and science supports the FIA, especially in the replacement of bonds. Not to just reiterate what you said, but it's a home run. Absolutely.
And just to hit on something you just said, it's important to use third-party references because, see, when the advisor's out on the appointment, the client knows they have a conflict of interest. They get paid if they sell it. So what I tell people is show stuff from people who don't get paid whether they buy it or not. I don't get paid whether they buy it or not. Ibbotson doesn't get paid whether they buy it or not. Dr. Wade Pfau, Dr. Finke, Dr. Moshe Malevsky, none of them get paid whether they buy it or not. So use those third-party references.
Good point. Last question for you, Tom. What challenges do you see for retirees today that might be unique that they didn't face 30 years ago, 40 years ago? And how about the agents who are serving them? What are the challenges that you're seeing out there from the agents in the field?
Well, I mean, for clients, it's that they could run out of money. They don't have the pensions that their parents had. They've got to create that guaranteed income. And there's only 3 sources of guaranteed lifetime income: Social Security, which is a lifetime income annuity, a pension, which is a lifetime income annuity, or you need to go find an insurance company and buy some form of lifetime income annuity. And fixed indexed annuities fit perfectly in there. So number one is guaranteeing them money But number two, it's also the happiness, Sean. They're going to be happier if they have guaranteed income, because I tell people it's the spending of money in retirement that allows you to be happy. It's the travel, it's the cruises, it's the dinners out, it's the bottles of wine with your friends. That's how you enjoy a retirement.
Yeah.
I tell people, I don't care how many millions of dollars you got stashed in some account somewhere. It's not going to help you. So they can be happier. And now the research shows they're going to live longer, that if they're happier, they have less stress, they tend to live longer. And so I'm going to be sharing all this kind of information. But then they've also worried about long-term care. They're worried about maybe they want to leave a legacy to their children. So, I mean, they're worried about inflation. And now the market's at an all-time record high. And so, I do an economic commentary every year. Traditionally, I've been focusing on interest rates, saying that interest rates are not going to go up for the foreseeable future. Well, now finally everybody knows that. Now I'm going to talk about, with the markets at all-time record highs, you need to be starting to think about protecting that. Take some gains, lock in some gains, protect your profits. Look, if this market is going to go down at some point, I don't know when, it might be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, it might be 6 months. I don't know. But when it does, it is going to wipe out the retirements of tens of millions of baby boomers if they don't put some guarantees into their portfolio.
Yeah. And when I wrote this question, I thought of one too. That low interest rate environment is meaning that those bonds that they're buying, that 60, 50% is yielding very, very little. Well, we've got people who have proven that FIAs can and probably will outperform bonds. So, hey, there's a perfect opportunity to try to trump that challenge right there, as well as the lifetime income and all those things that you mentioned. So, excellent stuff, Tom. Anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, one last thing. I mean, you also said, what are the challenges that agents face and advisors? Well, it's always seeing more people, right? And activity and prospecting. And then I would say you got to learn that too. So there is an amount of things that you need to learn: the words, the language, the questions, the stories, but also some prospecting and marketing methods. And I've got that available. We've even got a free prospecting guide on my website, tomhegna.com. There's a free webinar, tomhegna.com/webinar. So I try to do things for free as well, Sean, to help advisors. I got a YouTube channel. And so these are some of the things that if they got to learn to see at least 2 people face to face every day. I say try to see 3 people face to face every day.
Okay.
If somebody tells me how much money they want to make, I can tell them literally exactly what they need to do. And I know that's what you do as well. So I want to thank you for everything you're doing, for supporting the field out there. I think there's going to be a lot of people attending this because they're going to get out of the winter and come down to Vegas for free. And anybody can attend this thing, and they're going to get great training from top producers and experts in the field. I'm looking forward to it, and I just want to say thank you to you.
Thank you, Tom. February 6th and 7th at
Planet Hollywood
in Las Vegas. Tom Hegna will be there, Family First Life. Looking forward to it. And thank you so much, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean.